Hi there, everybody. My name is Dr. Kris Albert, and I'm a leadership coach here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I'm a member of Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd, who is affiliated power congregation here in Lancaster. As I said, I'm a leadership coach, and one of the things that I do is I help individuals and organizations move past the things that are keeping them stuck. So that they can lead more effectively and more courageously. And so I'd like to share with you today a tool that you're going to be using that's called Mapping the Theory of Change. And the point of this tool is in your conversations today at the tables, you're going to be mapping a series of steps to move from whatever you've identified as something that's important that currently exists and where you want to go with that. So this theory of change that I'm going to share with you comes from, it's the work of Lana Jelenjev. Let's see, there's Lana's name in the book Community Builder. And I'm going to be bringing this up onto the screen in just a moment. But the theory of change is one of the activities in this book. I will put a link down below so that you can take a look at this book online. And there are all kinds of tools in it that are helpful for these kinds of conversations. But the one today that I want to share with you is this idea of the theory of change. And I'll share my screen here. And this is a completed theory of change. I'll get a little more specific about it in just a moment, but this is a theory of change that I put together. It's just an example, a path to becoming anti-racist, okay? And so over here on the left, I've identified current state that I was thinking about and my long-term goal and my vision for that. And then you'll notice that it's broken down into people's knowledge, people's mindsets, and people's behaviors, and a short-term goal along the path and a medium-term goal upon the path. So let me show you a blank here. In order to understand the change that needs to happen in the community, it's best to be able to design the community's theory of change to be able to make visible the kinds of change that you want to achieve. And so this tool in your time together will help you to capture your thoughts, again, in terms of what your long-term goal is and to identify a short-term and a medium-term goal. And I like to start here on the left in this blank space by writing down what the current state is. So today, you're going to come up with whatever this idea is that you want to map. And I don't know exactly how you're going to do that. I know Pastor Matt will lead you through that. So you will identify what exactly is the problem that you're trying to solve. And you'll notice on that example that I gave you, it was the steps to becoming an anti-racist. It wasn't to eliminate racism, right? It needs to be something that is manageable. If you think about it, they call them SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, right? So you're going to be thinking about some SMART goals here. And my suggestion is that you start in your group by identifying here the current state of whatever issue you're looking at. And if you notice, I'm circling down here over here to the left in the left margin. Now, what you want to notice here is what is the current state in people's knowledge, what people know about this particular topic that you're working on, people's mindsets, how people are thinking about this issue that you're working on, and what you're currently seeing in terms of people's skills and behaviors. And then from there, you want to have an idea of where do you want to go. So if you were going to look 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road, what is your long-term goal? And again, I wouldn't make it any longer than 6 to 12 months at the very most, because you need to break it down into achievable chunks, right? So think about what that long-term goal looks like, and what's your long-term goal in people's knowledge? What do you want people to know? And what is that change from where they are to where you want them to? So that's your first step, your beginning point and your end point. And then your next step will be to identify some short-term goals. So if you're looking at a long-term goal of a year, perhaps a short-term goal would be 3 months, a medium-term goal might be 6 months, or 4 months and 8 months and 12 months. So figure out your short-term, your medium-term goal. That helps give you some time bound. And what do you want to see in terms of people's knowledge? How do you want to see people's knowledge change? How do you want to see people's mindsets change? Short-term goal, medium-term goal, long-term goal. And how do you want people's skills and behaviors to change? Again, from the current to the short-term goal, the medium-term goal, and the long-term goal. So this helps you to break it down so that you can start to see some specific things that you need to do to get from here to there. Now, another really important piece of this is an assessment piece. How will you know that you've reached this point in terms of people's knowledge? How will you know you've reached the medium-term goal in terms of people's knowledge? And how will you know that you've met the long-term goal in people's knowledge? So the same thing holds true for mindsets. How will you see mindsets changing from short-term to medium-term to long-term? How will you see people's skills and behaviors changing from short-term, medium-term, and long-term? So let me switch over to the example that I showed you here at the very beginning, which is this path to becoming an anti-racist, as an example. So people's knowledge. People don't know definitions associated with DEI. And so a short-term goal would be that they know the definitions of implicit bias, white supremacy culture, and racism. And they can explain the meaning of each of these words. And then a medium-term goal is to have an increased knowledge of these definitions, including intersectionality, systemic and organizational racism. And they're able to use and reference these words in conversations about race and racism. And the long-term goal is that people have a working knowledge of these DEI definitions. So do you see how that works? Here's where we are. Here's where you want to be. Here are some intermediate steps, and here's how we know that we've reached that point. Knowledge is pretty easy to do because that's more concrete. Mindsets gets a little more challenging, recognizing here in this case, people don't realize that just because they don't think that they're racist doesn't mean that they're not, right? So the short-term mindset is to recognize that all white people have implicit biases toward people of color that require reflection and unpacking. And so how do we know we've reached that point? They're willing to admit that they have implicit biases and are willing to confront them in themselves. A medium-term goal, having engaged in personal work, they continue to seek opportunities for ongoing learning and recognizing that learning never ends. And so they're using language that implies that they're aware, and they're working on unpacking that for themselves. With the final long-term goal, the people recognize that all white people of European descent have implicit biases, and that we must continue to do our own work to understand, unpack, and dismantle them. And then the behaviors. Knowledge and mindset, that's important, but behaviors is where the change actually occurs. So in terms of path to becoming an anti-racist, people are displaying microaggressions toward people of color without even knowing they are doing so. And so we want them to be able to not only recognize it in themselves, but to also raise the awareness of others and interrupt those moments of when there is a implicit bias happening, or white supremacy culture is happening. So be able to actually point that out to other people in ways that are constructive and helpful. And that they're able to recognize systems of oppression, and so to begin to work on creating a more equitable culture. So again, people's skills and behaviors, individuals are able to identify the microaggressions that they've known themselves to have used in the past. And when they're asked, they're able to identify them. And then the medium-term goal, they're actively engaged in personal development, and people are able to recognize microaggressions in action and to be able to confidently call them out. So again, this is, you can see, here's what you start with, what your goal is. You identify what is currently the case, where you hope your long-term goal to be in 6 to 9 to 12 months, and then knowledge, mindsets, and behaviors, and explanations of how you have reached this point. I hope that helps contextualize what it is that you're going to be working on today, and the goal that you have, and how you might use that tool. I have sent that tool to Pastor Matt, so he has those for you. And if you have any questions, I will put my email address down below. I'm not able to join you today at the meeting, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if I can support you in any way at all. All righty. Thanks so much. Again, my name is Dr. Kris Albert. I'm the president and lead coach of Turning Points LLC here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and a member of Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd, a Power congregation. Thanks again for being here, engaging in this very important conversation, and have at it. I hope you'll get a lot of great results and clarity out of this activity. Bye-bye now.